After the success of her first two albums, Taylor Swift found herself under a lot of scrutiny. Was it really her, a teenage girl, writing these incredible songs? Surely there was a team working for her, ghostwriting her music. Well, Taylor famously said that people underestimate how much she's willing to inconvenience herself to prove a point. And this is the way her third album, Speak Now, was created. Each song's lyrics meticulously written by herself. These songs crafted as little letters to specific people filled with words she never was able to verbalize in the moment, but words she immortalizes forever in music. Hi, my name's Vera, and with 9 days remaining until Taylor Swift's 12th studio album, The Life of a Showgirl, comes out, I thought that it'd be nice to combine my love for literature and my love for Taylor Swift's art and recommend you some books based on each album to help with the wait and anticipation these next couple of days. Today we are continuing the countdown with maybe my favorite Taylor Swift album. Depends on the day, really. But we're talking about Speak Now. For these recommendations, I really tried to dig deep and extract themes and motifs I thought made the albums resonate so deeply and to tailor my recommendations based on that. The album's concept, the one that I just mentioned, this idea that it is a collection of letters addressed to certain people, words that she was never able to say in the moment, but she is speaking them now, that really, really speaks to me. And I think that that is what makes this album so special. And so I wanted to focus on this when giving my recommendations. So most of the recs in this video have some sort of element of this, but specifically, let's go back to Taylor's words, how she actually describes this album in the prologue. So she says, "These songs are made up of words I didn't say when the moment was right in front of me. These songs are open letters. Each is written with a specific person in mind, telling them what I meant to tell them in person, to the beautiful boy whose heart I broke in December, to my first love who I never thought would be my first heartbreak, to my band, to a mean man I used to be afraid of, to someone who made my world very dark for a while, to a girl who stole something of mine, to someone I forgive for what he said in front of the whole world." I think that this is not only incredible because of the blowback that she was getting, that she's not writing her own songs and she comes out with an entire album written by herself, but I also think it's incredible for world building, because if we think about these songs as letters for very specific people, well, I think that just builds out this world of Taylor Swift, the character that we find within these songs, so much more, and makes us as fans so much more invested in what she actually has to say. It means so much that this album is fully self-written, because each of these letters is her words exactly, undisturbed and undiluted. So the first book that I want to recommend is a book that also has this idea of writing chapters within the book, I guess essays in that case, to very specific individuals, let's say. And the book that I'm recommending is Slow Days, Fast Company by Eve Babbitt. This is her memoir about what life in the 1970s in Los Angeles was like. If you are unfamiliar with Eve Babbitt, she was the original LA it girl. She was at the center of LA's cultural scene, hanging out with artists and rock stars, attending Hollywood parties, desert road trips, having massive heartbreaks and scandals. Sounds like someone that we know, maybe. And she was also known, other than like the glamour, she was known for being messy but very witty and unflinchingly honest. And that is very much how she comes across in Slow Days, Fast Company. The structure of this book is the main reason why I'm recommending it. It is comprised of 10 essays, and they are quite short. So again, this is a book you can knock out quite quickly. Each one is like a self-contained story, but more specifically, since this is a memoir, it's a self-contained memory. She, just like Taylor, revisits specific moments and retells them. Memories where she didn't speak and is speaking now. It's important to note that the essays are not chronological. They're more like a collage of moments that give you a similar feel rather than a strict timeline. However, there are some characters or individuals, I guess, places that do show up between the different essays. But there is one more aspect in Slow Days, Fast Company that really makes it stand out, because each essay begins with a short address to someone, or a short dedication, if you will. And even if it's very obscure, kind of like the secret messages that Taylor Swift would leave earlier in her albums, and sometimes we never really figure out what the dedication means or why she's referencing it, it does give a certain sense of intimacy that, you know, Taylor also gives us by addressing these letters to very specific people. It builds out Eve's world, just like Speak Now builds out Taylor's world. And it also acts as an incredible frame for the story. It creates this effect that you know Eve, kind of, but not really, but it pulls you in to her mystique. Some are to a man who she loved but could never really fully have. Some are addressed to people by name. Some are addressed to a moment more so. At the end of the day, I feel like this reads like a series of postcards almost from a world that, well, no longer exists, but every single one is addressed to someone who mattered very deeply to our chronologist, if you will. So if you listen to Speak Now and read the Eve Babbitt's book, you are experiencing a similar intimacy, but in two different mediums. And I just think that's such an interesting thing to experience, such an interesting thought experiment of, we have a girl in 2010 putting out an album that gives us a similar experience that we got from Eve Babbitt's telling us about her glittering life in the 1970s. I find it beautiful how this bid for connection transcends time, really. Moving on to the next aspect of letter writing and Speak Now as an album that I really want to highlight is this idea of these messages that Taylor Swift is writing through the songs living in a liminal space. I mean, after all, there are messages she never said. She wished she did, but ultimately didn't. And yet, these messages that were ultimately never meant to be expressed are forever preserved in music that is played by millions of people around the world every single day. And instead of reaching the ears of that one person or being too powerful, too heartbreaking, or just being too raw and emotional for Taylor to be able to express in the moment, she is able to express them to millions of people on a world stage. Ultimately, it showcases how language can both connect but also separate people. It is really about the consequences of silence versus the consequences of speech. The songs sometimes act as bridges. Taylor uses words to connect across time, distance, space to finally speak her truth. Dear John, one of Taylor's best songs really, reads like a very deeply personal letter where she lays out every hurt and betrayal in very sharp and specific language, but you are very much also witnessing her journey to healing in allowing these words to be heard. And I'm sure that a song like this has helped many other people move through their pain and feel like they are being heard. Last Kiss is a heartbreaking song. Again, one of my favorites, but I feel like I'm going to say that about every song on this album. But it documents a relationship's final moments, these little tiny snapshots of wishing someone the best, even though you never thought that you'd ever have a last kiss. These songs act like bridges because Taylor's language makes her experiences universal. People realize that even though this one song is about Taylor writing a letter to one specific person, a lot of us have a person like a Dear John. A lot of people have a person that reminds them of Last Kiss. And maybe in singing along to her song, we almost feel like we are singing those words to our person that we were too scared to say the words to. On the other hand, you also have silence. The time when language fails and ultimately creates a distance. And some songs highlight what happens when words just aren't spoken at the right time. Speak Now or Forever Hold Your Peace, a song showing how silence leads to missed chances, or Enchanted building on that idea about meeting this person, having this very deep connection, but never expressing it and ultimately leaving the relationship unfulfilled. Overall, I'd say Speak Now is about Taylor wrestling about when to speak and when to stay silent. After all, language can cause pain or conflict. In Mean, her words are weaponized, showing the destructive side of speech. But on Back to December, Taylor Swift tries to apologize through a song for a mistake that she made in a time and a scene that she constantly revisits because she feels sorry for what happened. And a book that I think beautifully plays around also with this idea of language as a bridge, but language as a dividing force, how it can be weaponized and how it can cause healing, is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. It is a novel that is written in full as a letter from our main character, Little Dog, to his mother, who cannot actually read. So he is writing these letters, but knows that they won't ever be read. In a sense, these letters will also live in that liminal space. They are written to the public, as a book, I guess, but the message will never go to that one person that it was meant for. The book is basically telling Little Dog's life story as he processes also his family's living history. Specifically, it also talks about his grandmother and his mom, who survived the Vietnam War, later moving to the US, and the book does deal a lot with immigration and that inherited trauma. First chapter is one of the best things I've ever read in my life. The way it talks about mothers, the different perspectives of motherhood, the different roles a mother plays. Specific Little Dog's mom. She's loving but physically abusive, largely because of her own past, but there is also this very deep sense of tenderness mixed in with pain between every interaction. And there's also his grandmother Lan, who helped raise him, who was a huge figure in his childhood. She tells him stories from Vietnam about surviving the war, about what their family went through back in that country before coming to America. And a lot of these fragmented stories from the women that helped raise him forms Little Dog's understanding of his identity and his history, even though those are fragmented memories. The story itself also follows Little Dog, obviously, as he grows up in Connecticut, navigating poverty, racism, being a queer kid in an environment that doesn't always really accept him. It follows his first love, how passionate and intense it is, but also how destructive. Vuong is a poet, and so the writing is absolutely beautiful and lyrical. I love his reflections. Honestly, it really reminds me of reading a Rilke book because there's just something in the DNA of the prose itself that I feel like is a connective thread there, and it really tickles my brain at the end. But yeah, ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a book about language, both connecting and separating people. And it is heartbreaking, but it is very beautiful. And in my opinion, to some extent, the letter is as much for Little Dog as it is for his mom, ultimately. It's his way of making sense of who he is, where he came from, and I think that's something that can be said for Speak Now as well. It is as much a letter to other people as it is a reflection of what Taylor was going through at a certain age and time. I also think that this is an interesting comparison to Slow Days Fast Company, because in Slow Days Fast Company, you are very much in the role of the sender of the message, whereas here, you are much more in the role of the recipient. So at this point in the video, I want to ask you this. What does it mean to be haunted by something? How exactly does that feeling manifest? And before you jump to any conclusions, let's really think about haunting in the context of this album, because I think it is one of the most prevalent, if not most obvious motifs. Obviously, people can very easily point to the song Haunted, but I think that haunting is throughout the entire album, not just in that one song. Though it is an incredible song where Taylor begs, come on, don't leave me like this. I thought I had you figured out. Can't breathe whenever you're gone. Can't turn back now. I'm haunted. She is yearning, breathless, dire. This song is so, it just gives you that feeling of not being able to breathe. In Sparks Fly, which is my favorite Taylor Swift song of all time, number one. She also references a haunting, but in a much more romantic sense. When she says, get me with those green eyes, baby, as the lights go down, give me something that'll haunt me when you're not around. So what is haunting to Taylor? Is it something evil and malicious? Or is it something beautiful that just can't leave you alone? Something that you replay in your mind over and over because you just can't help it because of how it made you feel? I'd argue that this entire album was born out of this idea of Taylor being haunted by all those moments because of the things that she never said. And more than that, she was finally pushed to writing these these thoughts in her head to Paige, because she was haunted by this rumor that was being spread and believed in the industry that she wasn't writing her own songs. So I ask you again, what does it mean to be haunted? I think that a book that deals with that question in a very fascinating way. It's about haunting of things that were, things that could have been, things that might be. And it's called House of Leaves by Markazy Danielewski. It is a very trippy book. It is quite infamous on the internet, actually. It has quite the reputation because it is something that is termed ergodic literature. It makes you work to understand what's going on. It makes you work. The author wants you to physically interact with the book, whether it is rotating it upside down to the sides, flipping forward and backwards, scanning through footnotes. And it is a book also that haunts. But what it is exactly about is kind of hard to explain. At its core, we have this text that is termed the Davidson record, and it's about a house that is bigger on the inside than it appears to be on the outside. The Davidson family moves into this house and discovers a hallway that shouldn't exist. It is a hallway that extends beyond the limit of the house's walls. It shifts, it grows, and the dad, Navy, he becomes obsessed with exploring this hallway, filming everything. He actually has just won the Pulitzer Prize for a very harrowing image. And so he's using all those skills to document what is going on. But slowly, this starts to tear the family apart. But the way this story is told is just as important as the story itself, if not more, because that is just one part of House of Leaves. This book is layered with narrators. So you have the level of the Davidson record, but then the hyper-diegetic level, so the level above that, is the story of a guy called Zampano. So Zampano is this blind man who is found dead at the very start, but I'll get to that in a second. And he was writing an academic-style manuscript analyzing a documentary called The Davidson Record about the house. And so you have him writing the story, but he's a blind man. So how could he have ever seen this documentary, especially since there is no record of such a documentary or these people ever existing? And yet this book that he is writing, this record that we are reading, written by him, is very, very academic, and there's so many sources linking back and forth. How did he do it? We just don't know. And then the level even more above that, the even more hyper-diegetic level, is the one with Johnny Truant, who is a man who finds Zampano, this old man, with his friend in an apartment that is an absolute wreck. The wreck? Well, those are the pages of the manuscript that we are at liberty to read within the book. Now, there is a lot of discussion about what this book is actually about, and something that I found very interesting when going into it is just the different sort of descriptions that you would get of it, because some people will argue that it is a critique of academia. Some people will say that it's a love letter to filmmaking. Some people will call it a horror book, or some people call it a thriller. Some people call this a romance. Some people say that it is all about this deconstruction of the Americana, kind of like a Great Gatsby. Some people say that it is a critique of, exploitation of poverty by rich people. There's so many things that you can come away with. And of course, some people ultimately finish the book and say, well, it's about it being pointless. It's about all this just being pointless. There is no point. I would disagree. But even if that is the point, anyway, I don't think that would take away from my experience with this book. Anyway, but that's the biggest word that I want to say. This book is an experience. And more than that, it is a book that haunts. It is a book that sticks with you the entire time. It is a book that I think about constantly still. It is a book that deals with this idea of the haunting. Navy is haunted by his past. Johnny is haunted by what happened to Zampano, and as he delves deeper into this obsession with the Davidson record that Zampano wrote. Karen, who is Navy's wife, she is haunted by this breakdown that is happening between their relationship. Tom, the brother, who is one of my favorite characters, he is haunted by this separation between him and Navy that he is perhaps trying to fix now. It's beautiful, and the book ultimately ends up haunting you. Not in a scary sense. I don't want to say it's scary, it's just very human, and it touches a certain chord, which I think is incredible. So if you want an experience of a novel, I highly recommend House of Leaves. The last theme that I want to speak about when speaking about Speak Now, honestly, take a shot every single time I said speak in the video, and you're gonna be hammered. But Speak Now reflects Taylor Swift's understanding that reinvention is essential for longevity. By this point, Swifties have understood that every single time an album releases, there will be something different. Debut was pure country, Fearless was country pop, and then comes along Speak Now, which is country rock, country pop rock, something like that. It's very inspired by, like My Chemical Romance, Paramore, Panic at the Disco, sounds that I love as well. So that's why I really love this album. But yeah, it's by this point, Taylor has already started a trend of reinventing herself with each album serving as a new chapter in her evolution as an artist and storyteller. This reinvention allows her to shed old versions of herself while introducing new personas and keeping her artistry fresh and relevant over time. And she keeps doing this throughout her career, leading to the success that she has today. The act of writing and releasing these songs that she puts on her albums immortalizes unspoken words, transforming fleeting emotions and private moments into lasting pieces of her legacy. She ensures that these past versions of her live on as she personally is able to move forward, bridging the gap between the past and the future self. And this idea, I think, really is seen in the fabric that makes Speak Now itself, which is a collection of deeply personal confessions preserved forever as she prepares to grow and evolve beyond them. And I mean, she doesn't really revisit Speak Now that often, am I right, guys? Haha. So she's definitely moving on and evolving beyond it. Don't mind me, just my Speak Now heart is crying. But in doing so, Taylor demonstrates that longevity isn't just about being ever present. It is about continuously redefining herself while leaving behind art that remains timeless. A book that really plays with this idea of longevity, but also having to reinvent yourself. And a book that it really isn't talked about that often, and I really wish it was more because I loved it, is The Strange Adventures of H by Sarah Burton. It is a historical fiction novel set in 17th century England, mostly in London, during the Great Plague and the Great Fire of London. It balances dark humor, grit, and drama, but with the focus on what life was like for women at the time. More than anything, though, it is the story of our main character, H. She starts her life in a respectable, comfortable home with her parents, but when they both die suddenly, she is sent to live in London with her aunt and her cousin. And though at first this seems like safety again, quickly we find out that is not the case. And H is forced to reinvent herself 2 times in this book and lived all these different lives, shed these old personas and create new ones in order to survive. And so obviously that mirrors this trend of having to reinvent yourself to become someone new. But the reason that I'm picking this book specifically for Speak Now is because frames reinvention as a form of longevity, this self-mythologizing, if you will, as a form of longevity. And again, no spoilers, but this is especially evident in the conclusion. I think that if Long Live was created in, London in the 17th century, then that would be the song that plays at the end of this book. I do think that some people might find the ending of the book to be slightly too saccharine, but I disagree. I think that in this case, it is very much earned, just like the saccharine ending of Speak Now, saying that at the end of it all, I had the time of my life fighting dragons with you after everything that we've been through. I just think thematically, The Strange Adventures of H is definitely a mirror to Speak Now in that way. Fighting the dragons and then coming out on the other side screaming, long live. Long live to those 3 girls that H is forced to be throughout this book. Long live to the 3 girls that Taylor Swift has been by the time Speak Now has released. And long live to all the future selves that are yet to come. All right, those were my Speak Now recommendations. You know the drill by now. Let me know what you think of them in the comments. Did you like these? Did you not? Have you read any? Are there any other Speak Now inspired books that you think people should read? Tell me in the comments. If you enjoyed this series so far, be sure to spread it around in the Swiftie spaces. I would be very, very, very grateful if any of you did that. That's all from me, and I'll see you tomorrow with my read recommendations. Bye-bye.